100 years ago, a small town in Iowa was shaken by a crime so brutal, it remains unsolved to this day. The Villisca Axe murders are among the most infamous cold cases in American history. Villisca was a quiet, rural community where residents felt safe, until the morning of June 10, 1912. Josiah and Sarah Moore, their 4 children, and 2 visiting friends were about to become part of a dark legend. The attack happened late at night, while the entire house slept. It was calculated, deliberate, and silent. The killer entered the home and moved from room to room. No one heard a sound as the tragedy unfolded. The next morning, the bodies were discovered. All 8 victims had been bludgeoned with an axe found at the scene. The brutality was shocking. The victims' faces had been covered with cloth, a detail that puzzled investigators for years. There was no sign of robbery. The motive wasn't money. It was something far more disturbing. Early investigations were chaotic. Hundreds of people trampled through the crime scene, destroying vital evidence. Police examined several suspects, from high-ranking politicians to traveling workers. Reverend George Kelly was perhaps the most notorious suspect. Known for his erratic behavior, he was tried twice. Despite his confession, which many believed was coerced, he was ultimately acquitted both times. Then there was Frank Jones, a powerful state senator who had a bitter business rivalry with Josiah Moore. Some pointed to William Mansfield, a suspected serial killer believed to be responsible for similar axe murders. But with mishandled evidence and widespread speculation, a definitive resolution remained out of reach. The murders shattered the sense of safety in rural America. Locks were installed on doors that had never been closed before. The case became a touchstone in true crime history, inspiring countless books, movies, and theories. Today, the Moore House stands as a museum. It is preserved exactly as it was, drawing visitors from around the world. For many, the mystery isn't just historical. The house is widely considered one of the most haunted places in America. Paranormal investigators often visit, hoping to find answers from the spirits that supposedly remain. But after more than a century, the question remains: who entered the house that night, and why? The Villisca Axe murders remain a dark chapter in the American story, a puzzle that may never be solved. Thank you for joining us on this journey into history. Until next time.
The Hinterkaifeck murders, a name that still sends shivers through the heart of Bavaria over a century later. In March 1922, a remote farmstead became the site of one of Germany's most brutal and enduring criminal mysteries. 6 inhabitants were found murdered on the Hinterkaifeck farm, leaving behind a trail of chilling questions. To understand the magnitude of this tragedy, we must look at the facts of that fateful night. It occurred between the night of March 31st and April 1st, 1922, at a remote farm near the village of Grobern. The victims were the Gruber family: Andreas, Kazilia, their daughter Victoria, and her 2 children, along with their new maid. The weapon used was a mattock, a heavy pickaxe-like tool found at the scene, used with terrifying precision. To this day, over 100 years later, the case remains officially unsolved. No one was ever brought to justice. The details of what happened inside that farmhouse are the stuff of nightmares. The victims were lured one by one into the barn, where they were struck down. The farmhouse itself held more horror. Maria Baumgartner, the maid, had only started working there that very day. She was murdered in her bed. Perhaps the most unsettling fact is that the killer stayed on the farm for days after the murders. Evidence showed they fed the cattle and even ate meals in the kitchen while the bodies lay nearby. It wasn't until April 4th that concerned neighbors finally entered the property and discovered the gruesome scene. The investigation that followed was a massive undertaking, but it was plagued from the start. Police faced a mountain of dead ends. Dozens of suspects were interrogated, from neighbors to returning soldiers. Rumors of hidden incest, inheritance disputes, and long-held grudges circulated through the community. The farm's remoteness and the contamination of the crime scene by curious locals made forensic work nearly impossible. Former lovers and local rivals were investigated, but no conclusive proof ever linked anyone to the mattock. Some even speculated that a soldier damaged by the horrors of the Great War might have been responsible. Despite the effort, the case went cold, cementing its place as Germany's most famous unsolved homicide. Today, historians and amateur true crime investigators continue to pore over the details, seeking a hidden truth. The farmhouse was demolished in 1923, and a memorial now marks the site, a quiet tribute to the lives lost. Hinterkaifeck has become a symbol of rural isolation and the darkness that can hide in plain sight. Its story has been revisited countless times in books, films, and podcasts, yet the killer remains a shadow. The Hinterkaifeck murders remind us that some mysteries are meant to endure, haunting the edges of our imagination. A cold case that refused to die. Thank you for exploring this piece of history with us. The Ketty murders remain one of California's most haunting unsolved crimes. A brutal quadruple homicide that shocked a quiet mountain community in 1981. Ketty was once a peaceful resort town in Plumas County, where families came to enjoy the beauty of the Sierra Nevada mountains. In 1979, Sue Sharp moved her family here, seeking a fresh start after a difficult separation. She hoped for peace for her 5 children. But that peace would be shattered on the night of April 11, 1981, in a small wooden dwelling known as Cabin 28. As the sun set, Sue's 15-year-old son, John, and his friend Dana Wingate were spending their evening in the nearby town of Quincy. Late that night, the boys returned to Cabin 28, unaware of the horror that awaited them inside. The following morning, Sue's daughter Sheila returned from a sleepover to find a scene beyond comprehension. In the living room, Sheila discovered the bound and lifeless bodies of her mother, her brother John, and his friend Dana. The brutality was staggering. All 3 had been subjected to extreme violence, bound with electrical cords and tape. But there was another horror. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was nowhere to be found. She had simply vanished from the scene. Investigators found multiple weapons at the scene, knives and hammers, indicating a frenzied and multi-person attack. The initial investigation was plagued by delays and a lack of resources as rural authorities struggled with the scale of the crime. Despite assistance from the Department of Justice, no arrests were made, and the community's trust in law enforcement began to erode. 3 years later, the case took another dark turn when Tina's remains were found 100 miles away near Feather Falls. Attention eventually turned to Martin Smart, a neighbor with a history of volatile behavior, and his house guest, John Boubide. Smart was the stepfather of a child who had been in the cabin that night. Both men had ties to criminal activity, but both denied involvement. Decades later, a letter emerged from Smart to his wife, which many believe was a cryptic confession of his crimes. With no forensic links and the primary suspects eventually passing away, the Ketty murders became a cold case for over 30 years. In 2004, Cabin 28 was demolished, erasing the physical landmark of the tragedy, but the memory of the victims remained. In 2013, Sheriff Greg Hagwood and investigator Mike Gamberg officially reopened the case, determined to find answers. A major breakthrough came in 2016 when a hammer matching the description of a missing murder weapon was recovered from a nearby pond. Modern forensic techniques were finally applied to the old evidence, including the tape used to bind the victims. In 2018, authorities announced a DNA match from the crime scene to a living suspect, the first solid lead in decades. Investigators believe that additional perpetrators or accomplices may still be alive, holding the secrets of that night. The Ketty murders transformed the reputation of this mountain town, becoming a symbol of investigative failure and enduring mystery. Today, the case continues to fascinate the public, inspiring countless documentaries and podcasts seeking the truth. For the families of Sue, John, Dana, and Tina, the search for justice and closure remains an ongoing struggle. Though decades have passed, the victims of Cabin 28 are not forgotten. The case remains open, waiting for the final piece of the puzzle. The quiet woods of Ketty still hold their secrets, but modern science is slowly bringing the truth into the light. Thank you for watching. The investigation continues. In the winter of 1978, 5 young men vanished into the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their disappearance remains one of California's most haunting unsolved mysteries. This is the story of the Yuba County Five. Ted Wire, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias were close friends from Yuba City. On February 24th, they drove to Chico to watch a basketball game. They were expected home that night, but they never arrived. Instead, their car was found 70 miles off course, high in the Plumas National Forest. The car was in perfect working order, with gas in the tank, yet it appeared to have been simply walked away from. Investigators were baffled. The car's undercarriage was pristine, suggesting it was driven with extreme care through the rough terrain. As a massive snowstorm moved in, the search was called off. The men's fate would remain unknown for months. In June 1978, as the snow finally melted, a group of motorcyclists made a gruesome discovery. They found a Forest Service trailer nearly 20 miles from where the car had been abandoned. Inside was the body of Ted Wire. He had survived for weeks, but ultimately succumbed to starvation and frostbite. The mystery deepened. The trailer was stocked with enough food and fuel to keep all 5 men alive for months. Yet, for reasons unknown, the supplies were largely left untouched while Ted wasted away. The remains of Madruga, Sterling, and Hewitt were eventually found scattered along the route back toward the car. All 3 had died of hypothermia. They were within reach of safety, yet they never made it. But what about Gary Mathias? His shoes were found in the trailer, but he was nowhere to be found. To this day, Gary Mathias remains missing. He is the final piece of a puzzle that refuses to be solved. One theory suggests they became disoriented in the snow and wandered off in a panic. A witness, Joseph Shawns, reported seeing lights and figures that night, but his account was clouded by a heart attack. Others believe they were coerced or followed. Why else would they leave a perfectly good car? The car wasn't stuck. It could have been driven back down the mountain at any time. In 2020, a new memorandum reclassified the case as a potential homicide. Investigators now believe foul play may have been involved, contradicting decades of accidental death assumptions. The Yuba County 5 mystery has inspired countless podcasts and documentaries, including Netflix's Files of the Unexplained. It is often called the American Dyatlov Pass due to its bizarre evidence and lack of answers. For the families, the search for the truth continues nearly 50 years later. They were just 5 friends going to a game. They never expected to become a legend. What really happened on that mountain? We may never know for sure. Thank you for joining us as we explored the mystery of the Yuba County 5. If you have any information, please contact the Yuba County Sheriff's Department.
One of history's most enduring puzzles began on a quiet Australian beach in 1948. This is the Tamam Shud case. On December 1, 1948, the body of an unidentified man was found on Somerton Beach, leaning peacefully against a seawall. He was well-dressed, but despite his appearance, he carried no identification. His mystery would span over 70 years. An autopsy suggested poisoning due to internal congestion, yet no trace of any known toxin was ever found. Stranger still, every label had been removed from his clothing. No fingerprints in the world matched his. A suitcase found later at the Adelaide railway station was linked to him, but it offered more questions than answers. Months later, investigators discovered a hidden pocket containing a tiny scrap of paper with a cryptic phrase, Tamam Shud, meaning it is finished in Persian. It was torn from a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. The book it came from was found in a local car containing a handwritten code and an unlisted phone number. The number belonged to a nurse named Jessica Thompson. Her reaction to the man's image was startled and evasive. The timing and the indecipherable code fueled theories of Cold War espionage. Was he a spy or a tragic lover? Cryptographers tried for decades to crack the code found in the book, but it remained as silent as the man himself. Some believed he was a man who deliberately chose to erase his identity before ending his life. The mystery finally met modern science in 2021 when the body was exhumed for DNA analysis. Professor Derek Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick spent years tracing his genetic history. In 2022, they succeeded. The Somerton man was identified as Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer from Melbourne. Carl was born in 1905. He had disappeared from his life, leaving behind a family and a mystery that would last decades. But identifying him didn't solve everything. We still don't know how he died or why he was in Adelaide. Was it poison? Was it suicide? The motive for his strange actions remains a subject of intense debate. The Tamam Shud case has inspired countless books and remains a symbol of the tension between science and the unknown. It drove innovations in forensic genealogy, showing that even the coldest cases can one day be thawed. Though his name is finally known, the Somerton man remains an icon of the allure of the unknowable. For more mysteries of the past, stay tuned. It is finished.